Okay. Okay. Oh, you. All right. I'm gonna calmly and rationally do a nice little synopsis and a minor review for the new Marvel Studios film Avengers Endgame. I know stuff.
Do what I say, don't say what I do. Do what I say, don't say what I do. Do what I say, don't say what I. Do what I say, don't say what I. Do what I say, don't say what I do. Do what I say, don't say what I do. Do what I say, don't say what I do. Do what I say, don't say what I do.
Maybe you've heard of it. Spoilers, obviously, ahead. I know, it's a cliche, but what are you gonna do? Okay, let's start with the synopsis. Basically, it's going to not pick up right where it left off. Maybe a few months after the so-called snapshot of Thanos. The remaining Avengers, Captain America, Black Widow, War Machine, yada yada, Hulk, Thor, are gathering together to try to figure out what to make of all of it. Iron Man and Nebula are still stuck in space. They are rescued by Captain Marvel. Very easy way to write that into the plot line without any super serious explanation there. Let's just get right to it. The film is 3 hours long, so it did get right to it, and it didn't really ever slow down. We see in the very beginning of the film, I should say, Hawkeye is training his young daughter on how to shoot a bow and arrow. Very, very nice little moment until he realizes that they are snapshot away while he's under house arrest. We already saw that all in the trailer or whatever, but it kind of really just starts absolutely at that point. When Iron Man and Captain Marvel and Nebula get back to Earth, they have a nice little conversation. It's reminiscent of the Civil War conversation, what they should do next type thing. Iron Man is very distraught for failing, while Captain America is also distraught, but not as wanting to figure out a way to do something about it. So they decide to go and find Thanos at the garden and engage in him to get the gauntlet back from him. That ends pretty miserably, considering he used the gauntlet to destroy the Infinity Gems. He was killed by Thor, chopping his head off during the battle. And that ensues 5 years of dealing with the snapshot, dealing with Thanos being ultimately victorious. But unbeknownst to us, Ant-Man was stuck in the quantum realm for 5 years. We all know that at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, he was trapped at the end credits scene in the quantum realm during the snapshot. He makes it to Avengers mansion headquarters, whatever, and explains to them that there may be a way to go back in time in the quantum realm and fix it. This is where a lot of people are getting confused in terms of the timelines and the time travel, because they do indeed time travel in this film, but they don't treat it in the way that most Hollywood films treat time travel. They actually treat it in a Marvel Comics style. Now, in the Marvel Comics style, and I'm talking source material, obviously, the Marvel Comics is notorious for what they would call the multiverse, multi-time lines and all that hoo-ha. So they pretty much, the Russos incorporated that in the film, explained away that when you go back in time, you don't change the current timeline, you just branch a new timeline. That's exactly the way they do it in the comics. Now, there are some vicarious stories here and there in the Marvel Comics library that do indeed, you go back in time and affect the same timeline. But overall, it's pretty much always been that way. If you go back in time, you'll branch off a different timeline. It's not a very popular concept from Hollywood, which is probably one of the reasons why it's getting a lot of adverse reactions, I think. A lot of confusion. It worked for all of the plot lines. It's really, I think, the only way the Russos could have actually brought all of the ends and payoffs that they promised for 10-ish years, 10, 11 years of films, 22 films and whatnot, to have each individual character have their own type of story arc ending, at least the major ones, the ones that started it all. You look at it into that mentality. It's not your atypical Back to the Future time story. I personally, I don't know if it's going to affect continuity beyond this point in terms of context and confusion. I got kind of confused during the film, but it didn't take away from the entertainment value at all. There are a couple of gripes, but they're honestly so minute that I don't even feel entitled to explain them. But I might touch base on them. Let me continue with the storyline. The storyline continues with a new mission. Now that the Avengers are gathered, although Tony Stark, now having a 4-ish-year-old child by the name of Morgan Stark, a pretty young lady with Pepper Potts. They're married. For 5 years, they went away and did their own thing. He has decided not to help because he feels that he's a complete failure in terms of protecting the world, and he kind of resents everybody that was working with him. He's resenting them because they didn't listen to him in the very beginning about putting, a suit of armor over the world and yada yada yada. But Pepper and him have a discussion, and she helps to convince him of something that he was already trying to convince himself of, which was to go back and help and figure out how to fix the time jumps, because Bruce Banner, who is pretty much Professor Hulk during the entire film, we hardly see Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner in the film. He's pretty much Professor Hulk the entire way. He was trying to figure out how to do the quantum technology, and understanding that Hank Pym, who developed all of this technology, is now snapshot away. He only had so much expertise working with Scott Lang, not being a scientist at all. Scott Lang's just, an Ant-Man. So they weren't able to figure it out on their own, how to get the time jumps just right. Tony Stark decided to come back, again thanks to Pepper Potts, convincing him, hey man, it's clearly what you kind of want to do. Goes back and helps them to fix the time jumps via quantum bracelets that he developed using his super genius mind. So they have a new plan. They're going to go back into they're going to go back into a bunch of different places in the world, or in the universe really, during a certain time to get back all the gems, all the Infinity Stones that are all over the place. So they each have teams to do this. They go back to New York, Volmir, yada yada, wherever it is that they needed to find those stones at that time. They did that, and there's a bunch of really cool stuff that they do during it. Some of the New York scenes were probably my favorite. The discussions between Sorcerer Supreme, the Ancient One, who had a small little role in this, but it helped to explain to the audience about time travel and how it was going to work. They expounded on it, did some exposition for us to help explain it. She had a discussion with Bruce Banner, who was Bruce Banner when she kind of knocked his spirit out of the Professor Hulk character. And they had a discussion about the time travel and how it would work, and she said, no, you're gonna have the branches all over the place. If you take our stone from this timeline, you're gonna destroy our timeline. He's like, no, man, we're gonna fix our timeline. Then we'll bring the stones back here, and it'll be like, you guys, it is what it is. You guys do what you do. It'll complete your timeline the way it was supposed to be, or whatever. Again, still kind of some maybe confusion there. I mean, like, what's going to happen in their new timeline, even though it's branched off already, and it's kind of confusing. I might have to watch it a few more times before I fully understand what the Russos were trying to do, because I don't think they were trying to do anything to rush it. They're very methodical in terms of writing and directing, and I think they had a plan all along. I just don't see it right now in terms of some of the inconsistencies that I'm seeing in the timelines. But anyway, they're discussing it. She agrees after he says that, oh, well, you have to let me have the time stone. She didn't want to, because Doctor Strange said there was only one way that this was going to work. And she was like, well, he's supposed to be the best of us, so I'm going to give you the time stone, blah, blah, blah. So he takes the time stone. They get the time. They get the other stones, the Tesseract and the Sphere, during the first Avengers film timeline. Some hilarious, really fan service went on there while there's the future Avengers were sneaking around, not trying to get caught by the past Avengers and things like that, and some throwbacks to films like Civil War. I'm sorry. Winter Soldier, Captain America Winter Soldier throwback. Just some hilarious stuff where they're in the elevator and Steve Rogers, future Steve Rogers, is trying to get the stone from the now who we know are SHIELD agents, and they're like, no, we have to call the director. We're not just going to give it to you. He's like, no, it's okay. And he whispers in the guy's ear. He's like, it's okay. Hail Hydra. So he's using his future knowledge about Hydra to the past SHIELD/Hydra agents, and they give him the stone. It's pretty funny. Then he has a little face-off with his past self, which is also pretty entertaining. The past Captain America thinks it's Loki dressed up as him, and it's just funny stuff. But if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. America's ass and all that. That was pretty funny. I like the fact that they show that Captain America's a little bit more laid back now. He understands a little bit more effectively the way things were. It's not that he's lost his idealism. It's just that he's a little bit more dated in the current time and reality, and he's been through all this stuff and blah blah blah. But anyway, so they go to the shenanigans of the New York. They get pretty much all the time, they get pretty much all the stones. Two of the biggest surprises for me was the death of Tony Stark. I kind of knew it was either going to be Iron Man or Captain America, mainly because we know what goes on outside of the films. The studios, they sign their people, and Robert Downey Jr.'s been there since the very beginning. He helped to establish, he pretty much was the backbone of the Marvel cinematic universe. Him and Jon Favreau did a great job in, promoting it, getting it out there, establishing it. But he's getting pretty expensive each film now, so that's also understandable why they would do something like that. And Steve Rogers, I did not see that coming in terms of his aging, and to be honest with you, like I said, I still have to see the film a few more times to understand how he could age at all, considering the super soldier serum. Considering that, I don't know how he was able to age at all, but okay. But him handing the mantle of Captain America to Falcon, I loved. A lot of people would rather have Winter Soldier, but currently Sam is Captain America in the comic books, so I think it's fitting. At this point, I should also mention that they're obviously establishing the Disney streaming service shows. They established everything in the future as far as the Marvel Cinematic Universe is concerned, I think, in terms of the character push-off points. You have Loki now, who knows where, with the Infinity Stone. That's probably going to talk something into his series. Scarlet Witch was pretty much shown as the badass that she is in the comic books, at least in the third act. And her whole quest to maybe fix Vision is their streaming service show. And then you have Winter Soldier and the new Captain America going to be in their new streaming service show. I hate to say it, I'm not a big Disney fan because they're, Satanists, but I probably will be watching these shows because I'm a goofball and I love Marvel Comics and the fanboy fun stuff. But anyway, as it were, the second and probably the biggest surprise was Black Widow's death. First and foremost, I didn't expect this, considering I knew that they're already planning on her film, and I realized it's a prequel film, or let's just say origin film. So they're going to be able to get away with that. But her being such a popular character, I would figure that they're going to work something else in to bring her back somehow. It was hinted in the film when Professor Hulk, Bruce Banner, was saying, I tried like the Dickens, he tried really hard to get her back with the snap because he was the one that was strong enough to do the reverse snapshot when they collected all the stones. Yes, they did. They all came back. They finally, after some minor problems that they had, getting back at least Captain America and Tony, they got all the stones back. Unfortunately, the old Nebula, I should say the evil Nebula from the past, was somehow connected to the future Nebula while they were trying to collect their stone, and past Thanos found out about it, so they ended up following them back from the past, or that past timeline, to our current timeline when they came back from the quantum realm. And that's pretty much where the final battle happened. But before we get to that, they're headed towards Volmir, and they're making all these cool little quips between then Hawkeye, now Ronin, back to Hawkeye, I guess. Anyway, and Black Widow, where this is nothing like Budapest because they're warping towards a different planet where the Soul Gem is, Volmir. They meet up with Red Skull again. Then it starts to kick in my head, and I'm thinking, wait a second, they can't take that Soul Gem unless someone dies. And sure as shock enough, they start strapping it on to find out who's going to give up their lives. And we already know that they love each other, best of friends, helped each other, saved each other countless times. And it was Black Widow who sacrificed her life for that gem. So that was a shock. I honestly didn't think, they'd do that. They did it. But she's been there for quite a long time as well. Anyway, we'll see her in the origin film. And who knows what they're going to do with the character after that. But, you know, with this quantum traveling wuzzy woozy, Marvel pretty much can do anything they want. So, they're back on Earth. Everybody's there. They reverse the snapshot. We get confirmation of this when Clint, his wife, calls him on the phone. But, you know, it was a short celebration because Thanos begins his assault. Past Thanos begins his assault on the Avengers. The major battle begins. The third act is just pure fan service. I mean, if you've read anything from, you know, all the arcs, I mean, almost all the little Easter eggs that were involved. We're talking Secret Wars issue number 4, where the Hulk holds up a mountain to, you know, protect the rest of the Marvel heroes in that comic. There's special reference to that. You see that and you're recognized and you're like, dude, that's from Secret Wars. That was very cool fan service. I believe there were some Fear Itself references. Also Infinity Gauntlet references, Infinity War references. Well, I mean, just what the movies derive from the source material. But probably one of the coolest payoffs was when Captain America Steve Rogers proves that he is worthy to hold Mjolnir, which was obtained from Thor's mission with Rocket Raccoon, getting the ether from the Dark World past timeline. He had the presence of mind to take Mjolnir from that timeline, which does kind of mess up their timeline, because now Thor from that timeline doesn't have his hammer. But anyway, so he takes the hammer right when Thanos is driving Thor's axe in his chest, trying to kill him. You see Steve Rogers get the hammer and call the hammer and throw it at Thanos and knock him off, and then you see Thor get very giddy as almost the audience's reaction is like, I knew it, he is worthy. That was really cool. Obviously a payoff from Avengers Age of Ultron, but seeing him throw the hammer and the shield and just wailing on Thanos with it, that was very gratifying as a fan, because obviously we saw that in the comic books, the source material. Well, the battle goes pretty rough because Thanos calls the rest of his army down, and all of them are revived, obviously. I mean, you know, his children and whatnot, and the Chitauri are even involved, and, you know, the space dogs, and they're all, you know, gathering against the rest of the Avengers, and it's just obviously the few Avengers that are there. So we're thinking, okay, well, this is going to be a pretty rough fight. You know, I think it's going to be rough. And then the one of the next biggest and best moments of the film was hearing Falcon say, "On your left." And we're like, oh, Snapple. Sure enough, you see Doctor Strange and Wong bring in all of the snapshored Avengers and heroes. I mean, we're talking Reavers, we're talking the rest of the Avengers, we're talking the Wakanda soldiers, we're talking Black Panther, we're talking everybody. And it's on like Diddy Kong, you know what I'm talking about, and they're just out there. And it's reinforcements. So the third act is just that, a major battle. You see Thanos doing everything he can to defeat them, but it's a big fight, man, and they're getting their butts whipped. Then you see Marvel come out of left field. She was out in some other Galaxy Adventures during the entire time heist that they call it, when they're trying to get all the gems from the other timelines. But she comes pretty much in the nick of time to rescue them from a lot of the devastation that could have happened while she wasn't there. So anyway, battle goes on. Thanos ends up getting the Infinity Gauntlet that they built with some Stark tech, and he's about to snap everyone back out into existence because he's a jerk. He's a jerk. But there are no stones on that glove. Turns out that Iron Man had another glove out of Stark Tech, and now he's holding it with the gems. And right before Thanos is spewing his monologues, he's like so confident with that glove and thinking. And you ever had the presence of mind to actually look at the glove and say, "Hey, well, there's no gems on this," but no, he was just going for it because he's a weasel. I don't like Thanos, by the way. There's a lot of Thanos fans out there. I think he's a pretentious, ill-will bonehead. But anyway, so he says, "I am inevitable." That's his cute little evil villain one-liner. And then you see Iron Man holding the glove, and like in the comics, more fan service. And he says, "Well, I am Iron Man," and snaps his fingers, destroying Thanos and his entire army, all of the invasion force, because Thanos had decided, well, since I can't kill half of the universe, I'm going to kill everyone and start over. So, past Thanos gets dusted, along with all of the other bad guys all over, all of Thanos' forces, and pretty much the film is done. Costing Tony his life, however, because he's a human being. It's they barely got away with the Hulk being able to harness that much power. His arm was pretty much fried after he had tried it, and he's Hulk. So obviously that's going to kill Tony. That was a good way for him to go out. Nice little funeral at the end, having a bunch of the major characters, including the grown-up, the teenager child from Iron Man 3 that nobody liked, but what are you gonna do? Overall, the film held together beyond expectation, which is why it's the #1 box office opening of all time, as currently. It was highly entertaining as a fanboy, as a kid that grew up reading these stories and having them read to me. That's how long ago I'd seen them. It was pretty entertaining, and also as a fan of the MCU, understanding that a lot of the source material has changed. It's kind of ridiculous to even talk about those changes. I mean, like, obviously it has to be changed. You can't take everything directly from the source material. It just wouldn't work. But what was taken was put into the films brilliantly, and I think the Russos obviously paid it off. They ended most of the story arcs appropriately, if not nearly perfectly, and I think that overall it's an incredibly entertaining film. One of the reasons why I waited this long to get this video out is because I wanted you guys to kind of see it and talk about it. Not like my opinion matters all that much, but for those who are interested in what I think, this is what I think. Going into the review aspect, I already hit on some points. I'm going to start off with the minute things that I had issues with. Professor Hulk, not that big of a deal in terms of fighting overall. I think I know why. They were using him more as a plot device, which worked out very well. But I really would have liked to have seen him have some, maybe a little bit of payback with Thanos, kind of like to help pay off that whole thing in Ragnarok. I think maybe that would have been kind of fun, but it's okay. There was plenty of payoffs in terms of paybacks with against Thanos, especially in that third act. That Scarlet Witch just wailed on him. That was pretty cool, and that was fun. And Captain America got some payback too for the fight that he had with him in Infinity War. But, as it were, Some of the other gripes are the things that I have kind of figured out about the timelines. Kind of not too happy with in terms of the branching. Because no matter how you spin it, you really cannot get away from the fact that, well, I'll give you an example that I stated earlier. Thor will not have his hammer. He doesn't have his hammer. Now, maybe some of you guys can correct me and help me figure out how he gets his hammer back when they return the stone. Because remember, at the end, Captain America returns all the stones in the quantum realm back to the timelines. Maybe in some way that correlates and fixes that timeline properly, but I don't think so. I don't think it works that way, because once they're back in that timeline, yeah, it doesn't affect the current timeline, but that branched timeline is already branched off. It's already a different thing. And I know, again, the Ancient One and Professor Hulk had a discussion about it, and it was supposed to explain it to me. Maybe it went over my head, but I still feel kind of there's some inconsistencies there, and it is what it is. Kind of thought that they could have figured out another way to get the Soul Stone. However, in its defense, Gamora, old Gamora, or new Gamora, or future Gamora, and Black Widow are now stuck in that Soul Stone state, in the Soul Realm, whatever. So maybe there's something going on there. A few of the other points that I might have had some issues with is there were a couple of moments that they kind of, I guess, maybe trailed off. Nebula and Stark in the beginning where they were bonding. Maybe they could have had some sort of wink moment, and it was kind of obscure in which he was playing finger flick football with her in the beginning of the film, and Ant-Man says "flick me" to him. Making a quick reference to flicking Ant-Man during the fight. Not even sure if that was related, but whatever. Suffice it to say, those complaints are actually thoroughly minute. In terms of what I would say is the much bigger picture, which I'm sure a lot of you noticed, which was obviously the whole political justice, quote unquote, movement that is now saturating the market. Now, when I said that Walt Disney is satanic, I'm not kidding. We can go through a bunch of references coming from their films. And
just but he sees you getting round by the imposter Jew. But make no mistake, the Most High is in charge. Despite all of your rockstar fallen gods, Kwame Sharala is about to rise, much to the Illuminati's ultimate demise. You think you're safe cause your blood is blue, well I'll be red and delivers the dead. But it's alright, cause this too shall pass. The Most High just used you to paddle my ass.
Their esoterics and things like that to prove it. Disney being I believe he was a 32-degree Freemason when he was when they chopped his head off and put it in a frozen incubator. It's in somebody's refrigerator somewhere. But whatever. The subtle point that I'm trying to get at, and most people that well, the subscribers that check out this channel know where I'm coming from. A Hebrew Israelite perspective, a Bible believer. I see, the grand picture of why Disney bought up all these properties. It's a consolidation of a satanic worldview that's going to push the social awareness to PG-13 audiences and whatnot to their narrative, which is a all-inclusive narrative. Now, inclusiveness doesn't necessarily mean disrespecting people. That is never my intent. Love thy neighbor, which means everybody, as far as I'm concerned. I don't have to agree with lifestyles. That's my free will, my choice. I believe what the Bible says about lifestyles and choices. That being said, you can be respected. Having Russo cameo in the film, playing a homosexual, whatever, that didn't even feel pushed. That didn't even feel, obviously it felt natural, whatever. I was actually more impressed that Jim Starlin, the creator of Thanos and a lot of the Infinity storyline ideas, was there as another cameo. That was actually more interesting to me. There were nods to things like A-Force, which is the all-female Avengers team in the comics source material. There was a nod to that during the third act. That didn't even feel pushed. But I do see the trend where things are going from here, because before Endgame, we never had even this involved. Now, this is important for one of two things. It's not necessarily a gripe. It's just me foreshortening, knowing the feminist narrative that's being pushed, especially in Lucasfilm's Star Wars series now. If Rey would have been a much more interesting human character, I probably would be a little bit more emotionally invested, but I honestly couldn't care less about that character. There's really only two of the new characters in the Star Wars saga. You can't even call it a Skywalker saga. Maybe Jar Jar Binks Abrams will be able to fix it, but who knows. The two characters that I kind of sort of feel a little involved with is Kylo Ren and Poe, which this last film, Last Jedi, they made him look like a complete moron just to push the whole feminist agenda, which was beyond obvious and ridiculous. If you really want to push equality, don't push one or the other. Just keep them flat level, intermingled on an equal level. But see, these guys can't do that because they want to push a narrative of dominant supremacy. But we're talking about Marvel, not Lucasfilm, but they are both owned by the satanic organization Walt Disney, and that is what it is. Kevin Feige, who runs Marvel Studios, has done an impeccable job, I think, in keeping a lot of these political viewpoints out of the films. But now I see it trickling in, and it's going to be interesting to see how much further it's going to be pushed, because to be honest with you, I believe that was Walt Disney's intent from day one. That's why they're, consolidating all of these properties. Now they have Fox, and they're going to be able to trickle the poop downward to manipulate the masses into believing their Luciferian one world order BS. So it's unfortunate that my characters that I kind of hold dear to my heart from the source material are being used in that way. I don't like it. I think it's pretty freaking evil. If you want to push a narrative of feminism or, identity politics or any of that BS that's going on right now, if you want to push that narrative, create your own characters to do it. But you don't have the intelligence to do it, so you're going to steal things that I like. That's fine, man. It is what it is. After all, it's just movies. It's just comic books. I don't live my life by this, which is another gripe that I have. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that, in my opinion, just looking at some of these videos, especially the reaction videos, if you're crying because of a trailer, or you're crying because of events in this film, I think that psychologically you got a problem, man. It's just a movie, okay? I mean, I'm gonna get a lot of gripe for this, obviously, but I don't see the validity in that. These characters do not exist. They're not real. Okay, the situations are not real. Now, they base a lot of these situations from mythological ideas and ideologies and whatever, but in essence, Captain America does not exist. Okay? It's okay to have fun, pretend, imagine, play, just as children do. I don't mind that. But taking it to another level is beyond me. I used to be that way. I guess this is one of the reasons why I resent it so much. But it is a dangerous, slippery slope, because psychologically you kind of detach yourself from reality to a point where you're not existing in the here and now. There are very real dangers and real threats happen right now, and we're detached from that because we're so distracted by things that we feel are real in our hearts, but they're not real at all. So a word of caution to you people out there that maybe you're trying to fill a void in your heart, and a dumb Star Wars trailer is doing that for you. I feel sorry for you. I do. I think that you have some serious spiritual issues that you need to iron out. If you want, private message me, DM me, or whatever the heck you kids are calling it these days, and I'd be glad to talk to you about it. My heart has been filled by the Holy Spirit. My heart and mind are now full with the scriptures. You guys can take that for what it's worth. It's up to you. It's fine. Everybody has their own opinion and viewpoint. Rock on. But I am interested in where the MCU universe is going in terms of that context. I see the trend. It's already happening. I see a lot of esoterics and agendas and narratives coming from a dark place into this these current franchises that, again, I grew up reading in the source material and grew up to love them. And it kind of helped in terms of morality, as I didn't have a father helping me out. I had older siblings and they did the best they could, but overall we were kind of on our own to figure things out in terms of morality. We weren't scriptural people. But it's changed now. I have true morality, but I believe that the Lord led me to certain things so that I could figure things out and have a broader perspective on how to, I guess, discuss this with others. The Bible tells us, be all things to all men. In other words, try to relate to everyone, because there's really no reason not to. If somebody's in the world and you used to be in the world, you're no different than them. You realize a certain truth, so you're going to try to help them out of it if they want to. It's everybody's choice. Nobody has to go where I go, and I definitely don't have to go where you go. But if there's truth, there's truth. So those are the minute gripes and the more serious issues that I see on the horizon. But again, it is what it is. And All in all, the film, Marvel Studios' Avengers Endgame, was entertaining in terms of my fanboyness. I got a lot of payoffs, as I'm sure all of you did. Go into it just realizing that it is what it is. It's just meant for fun, meant for payoffs, meant for fan service, and they pretty much did everything that we wanted them to do in terms of all story arcs. So that's that. Bless you guys. I appreciate all you guys and I love all you guys. Glory to the Most High. Hayashura Haya Bahashim Yeshaya Rawa Wakadash. That's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Have a great week. Yeah, I know. I missed a lot of stuff and forgot a lot of stuff. Like I said, I only saw it one time. Probably see it a couple more times. Maybe expound on it a little bit. Comment, like, and subscribe. And rock out with your sock out.